If you continue to speak, our administrative law judge will ask you to leave the podium. We will ask you to please limit your applause or any additional noise that's made. It will give us more time to get as many speakers as possible. At this time, I will have our administrative law judge introduce themselves and give you the ground rules for the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Good afternoon. At this time, I would like to call the hearing to order. My name is Louis Alexander, and I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Hearings and Mediation Services at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Presiding over today's hearing will be Administrative Law Judge Richard Sherman. We are looking forward to hearing and receiving your comments today. Judge Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Mr. Alexander said, my name is Richard Sherman. I'm an administrative law judge with the department. I've been assigned to conduct today's hearing concerning horizontal drilling and high-volume hydraulic fracturing. This afternoon, we will be accepting verbal and written comments on the following 3 documents: the revised draft supplemental GEIS, the proposed general permit for stormwater discharges, and the associated proposed revisions and amendments to DEC regulations. All of these documents are available for review on the department's website, which is www.dec.ny.gov. The purpose of today's hearing is to receive your comments on these documents. If you wish to make a statement, please be sure to complete a speaker registration card and return it to the registration table, which is located outside in the room adjacent to the lobby. Speakers are encouraged to submit lengthy statements in writing and provide only a summary of those comments here today. In order to allow for as many speakers as possible, speakers will be limited to just 3 minutes each. And as Mr. Evans pointed out, we would like it if people would refrain from applauding or otherwise disrupting a speaker. That will allow us to hear more people this evening, and it will also allow the court reporter to get a complete transcript of each speaker's comments. Please be respectful of all those who wish to speak today by keeping your comments brief. If necessary, I will ask speakers to conclude their comments. Note that written and oral comments are given equal weight by the department. If you would like to submit written comments after today's hearing, you may do so online through the department's website, or you can send your comments directly to the central office in Albany. Department staff has complete contact information for written submittals outside the theater in the lobby. That contact information is also provided in the notice of public hearing that was published in the Environmental Notice Bulletin on September 28th. Please be mindful that any written comments must be received by the department before December 12th, 2011 to be considered. As Mr. Evans noted, he will be calling groups of speakers to the front of the room to be seated close to the microphones. I will then call the speakers individually. When I call your name, please go to the nearest microphone, state your full name and organization, if any. Please be sure to speak clearly and directly into the microphone so the court reporter is able to accurately transcribe your statement. If you have a written statement, please provide that to the court reporter at that time. I ask that the audience be respectful of each speaker, regardless of whether you agree with the opinions being expressed. We do have a number of elected officials here tonight, and we will begin with them. Our first speaker will be Assemblywoman Lupardo.
This microphone. We'll just be using one microphone tonight, and that's the microphone to my left.
Okay, so I'm addressing you then.
Yes.
Okay, very good. My name is Donna Lupardo. I represent the 126th Assembly District, which includes the city of Binghamton and the towns of Vestal and Union. The southern tier obviously is central to the drilling debate, and as you can see, hundreds of people are here to weigh in on this subject. I want to officially welcome you and thank you for holding this hearing. Even though you've already received thousands of comments on the document, it's important that every avenue be used to encourage public participation. So welcome to DEC and those who are here to listen and those who are here to provide testimony. A major point of this hearing, as you mentioned, is to solicit specific responses to the preliminary revised draft of the SGEIS. This document has already undergone substantial revisions in response to public input, and it will again. As a member of DEC's advisory panel on this topic, I've already had ample opportunity to weigh in on the document and on specific funding issues that affect the state's ability to regulate this activity. I've expressed concerns over drilling in floodplains, especially given the recent devastating floods. I've discussed with my colleagues the need for a comprehensive approach to wastewater treatment, along with a better understanding of potential health impacts. And regarding the economic study component of the SGEIS, I've expressed concerns regarding the unique needs of urban centers like the city of Binghamton and Elmira. Expenses associated with various social impacts will need to be offset in some way, and other issues to do with that as well. I'll be reviewing the comments from these hearings along with my fellow panel members as this process moves forward. It's obvious that many people are frustrated with the pace of the review process. Some want to speed it up, some want to slow it down. I have to tell you that the majority of my constituents in the 126th district support a deliberative process that gets it right in the end. I hope that's something at least we can all agree on. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Lifton.
Good afternoon. I'm Assemblywoman Barbara Lifton. I represent the 125th Assembly District, which is all of Tompkins County, the city of Cortland, the town of Cortlandville, and the town of Virgil. Good afternoon. Thank you for holding these hearings. In these brief minutes, I will stress just a couple of points. When the first draft came out in 2009, I and many thousands of others, informed citizens, eminent scientists, environmental groups, and notably EPA Region 2, used the word inadequate repeatedly in relation to that document. These well-informed New Yorkers said, there is no health study, there is no real plan to deal with the polluted wastewater, there is no assessment of cumulative impacts, there is no economic impact study, and on and on. While there have clearly been some improvements in this draft, many of these critical issues remain unaddressed. The DEC keeps insisting that it has taken many months to do this work, but of course, it's not about how many hours went into this task, but about the quality of the product. Perhaps most importantly, there still is no health study being done by New York or apparently by Pennsylvania authorities that tells us about the real health risks. I have learned of at least 2 young women in Pennsylvania who developed barium poisoning soon after a well was drilled, one of them a full 1,200 feet from her water well. A 500-foot setback, as is now proposed in this document, a 500-foot setback from water wells is still inadequate. I recently asked the DEC if, with the involvement of DOH, they are studying this, if we are gathering data from Pennsylvania about this critical health problem and other health problems. The DEC said, we are aware of this issue, but we are taking mitigating measures of increasing the setbacks, and we have a better regulatory regime in New York State. So the DEC seems to conclude, with our regs, there just won't be any serious health consequences. That is an unacceptable response in my view. We know there are risks with high-volume hydrofracking. Your own document acknowledges that, as you exempted the largest watersheds in our state. So for the DEC or DOH to not thoroughly investigate those known cases of barium poisoning that people in Pennsylvania believe is caused by high-volume hydrofracking and make a determination about causation seems to me a head-in-the-sand, see-no-evil stance that is not responsive to the very great concerns of New Yorkers. To repeat, our calls for a health study have gone unheeded. Another important issue is the complete inadequacy of the E&E report, which appears to be largely a cut-and-paste job from industry press releases, with all the supposed benefits and no real look at the downsides of hydrofracking. It's a troubling day in New York when the research from a world-renowned university, Cornell, our land-grant university, is brushed aside for a report from a business that is widely perceived as having a conflict of interest and which is a one-sided and hence woefully inadequate report. And there continues to be no mention of the ongoing and great problem of the state setback of 100 feet from residential dwellings, which is incompatible with the requirements of the secondary mortgage market. In conclusion, There is widespread concern about high-volume hydrofracking in New York. 2 new polls from Sullivan and Delaware counties.
Your time is up.
May I finish? Just 2 sentences?
We're really trying to keep it to 3 minutes.
I urge, just 1 line, please, to finish.
Please.
I urge the withdrawal of the SGEIS and a continuing moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Please, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, your applause will only delay the process here. The more you applause, the fewer speakers will be able to hear this afternoon. So I please ask you to withhold from applauding and let the speaker have their piece. Thank you. Mayor Ryan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm the mayor of the city of Binghamton, a lawyer, environmental law and policy adjunct professor for 10 years at BU, and with an environmental sciences undergraduate degree. As I look back on all the ecological disasters that we have seen throughout our country, our state, our community, all the Superfund sites that we are still cleaning up and will be for decades, not to mention the DEC claiming there's no problems in the Western New York vertical drilling wells, which is totally nonsense. You would think that an industry as notoriously dirty as the oil and gas industry, using a process that none of us knows enough about, would get the kind of scrutiny which would assure all our citizens will not have to look back at a legacy of broken promises, a devastated and poisoned environment, cancer clusters, endangered workers, sickness and disease, all caused by a rushed process. A rushed process fueled by millions and millions of dollars of slick PR campaigns and tremendous industry pressure to make sure this happens now. Why the rush? Because this industry already knows what the DEC should be making sure it finds out, that this hydrofracking process from cradle to grave is so fraught with known problems, from areas where drilling is already taking place to unknown problems that will continue to surface as this industry, only in its very infancy, continues to push forward into all areas where there are shale deposits. They are desperate to get their wells in the ground to solidify what they called their expert land grab, to keep investors interested and to make sure it all happens before we have time to study the things we need to study before one permit is issued. This requires a comprehensive environmental impact statement, a statement that leaves no doubts for its citizens that we have done everything necessary to protect and ensure the health and safety of all New Yorkers. And we are not close to achieving that goal. As I said, it is a relatively new industrial process, and each day brings new revelations of problems. Just this week, there was evidence linking drilling with seismic activity. Things we know, and since 2008, 849 positions were cut out of the DEC. So we know that even the best laid plans will not have the regulatory clout needed to prevent illegal activity by a notoriously non-compliant, corner-cutting industry. We know we have not studied the health impacts, despite much anecdotal evidence that there are many from areas where drilling is already taking place, a glaring inadequacy of the current SGEIS. We know there's absolutely no cradle-to-grave scheme to deal with the astronomical amount of contaminated produced water and industrial waste. As a mayor of a city, a major city in the Southern Tier, I really wish I could be standing here asking to push this process forward, because we need money, we need jobs. But there's a lot of other ways to produce jobs. The EIS also requires alternatives, and we need to look strongly at those alternatives that will produce a clean, safe energy future for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Tesley? Mayor Tesley? Teisley? My apologies.
Mr. Sherman and Mr. Alexander. My name is Mayor Susan Feiszli, and I'm the mayor of the city of Cortland. As mayor, it's my responsibility to ensure the health, the safety, and environment of those that I represent. And up until this point, we've done whatever measures we could to protect our sole source aquifer. 3 years ago, I led a successful fight in opposition to a gas station that was proposed to be built outside of our city limits, but within a critical environmental zone. In the event of a man-made or a natural disaster, there would have been an immediate threat to the public health, safety, and general welfare of our city. Shortly after I formed an environmental advisory committee that worked at the health department to create a wellhead protection plan that was adopted this year. This year we also passed a resolution to further protect our environment by prohibiting the selling of water and accepting fracking waste into our wastewater treatment plant. Our city is located over a fault line. We have no alternate water supply. That is why DEC determined that our waterworks located in the city of Cortland is only one of 2 critically environmental areas established by DEC in Cortland County. Can DEC guarantee to cover any potential cost that could incur in the event that our drinking water is contaminated? Will you put that in writing? Is DEC willing to cover all expenses incurred in the events that our drinking water is contaminated, along with the many negative impacts, so that many have already expressed concern and will be expressing concern over? Would you be putting that in writing? In the event of contamination of our sole source aquifer, are you willing to cover the expense for buying and distributing water in the event of the city has to shut off its water supply to residents, the college, the schools, county buildings, the hospital, and water line extensions outside of the city of Cortland? Will you put that in writing? A friend of mine works for an asphalt company that works in Pennsylvania last summer. He met a driller who was hydrofracking in a nearby community. The driller said that in about a year, the community he was drilling would not be able to drink their water. My friend asked, "How do you sleep at night knowing that?" "It's a job," he replied, "and the money is good. Besides, I don't have to live here." Please do not take our health and future environment to a dollar sign. Today I stand with others who are at the mercy of DEC's deliberations that will determine the future of our environment. Please don't ignore our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Supervisor Salka.
My name is John Salka. I'm Town Supervisor of the town of Brookfield in southern Madison County, and also a member of the Madison County Legislature, and I want to thank all that have attended here today and appreciate their concern. In February of 2007, in the tiny hamlet of North Brookfield, located in the southern part of Madison County, the local residents experienced what is being called one of the most serious accidents to date in New York State, involving the drilling of a gas well. Now, please keep in mind that this was not a well that was being fracked and did not involve any company that is presently proposing to drill in New York. It was an exploratory well and was being done to determine the viability of that particular lease. While the well was being drilled, the point became lodged in the borehole. Compressed air was pumped into the ground for a period of 17 hours, and what occurred due to this was that the local aquifer sustained an incredible amount of pressure, thus seeking a route to vent that pressure. This venting occurred through fissures in the ground surrounding the borehole and proceeded to find its way to wells and streams in the area. Those wells were shooting up into the air like geysers, streams were bubbling up through their beds, and water supplies for homes were blowing air out of their faucets. This went on for quite some time until the compressed air finally equalized and resulted in the fragile aquifer below people's homes being affected. The town and gas company met with local residents and unfortunately gave these people very few options. The administration at the time informed them that it was not their problem and left them to their own devices. The insurance company that represented the driller proceeded to offer those affected a settlement, which included a very expensive filtration system, which is quite costly to keep running properly, a cash settlement to maintain that system, which has been proven to be woefully inadequate, and to take it or leave it approach. With no good choice available, the people signed off on any further claims, and a good number of them could no longer drink their water for the lack of funds to maintain those filtration systems. I see nothing like this that would be corrected by what's in the draft environmental impact statement today. Understandably, the people affected could not drink their water as it was tainted and the turbidity was unacceptable. This forced some of them to leave their homes and caused considerable disruption to local dairy farms. One woman I spoke to recently tells me that she and her family need to travel 15 miles a day one way just to get water from a local spring that they can drink. It is obvious that accidents will happen as admitted by the industry, and the implications are serious, affect many around, and can have long-range consequences. Brookfield is a poor town, and these people do not stand a chance against a large insurance company and a town administration that would claim no involvement in an issue they could not understand. I have seen firsthand the effects of an accident can have on a community, and I implore our governor and our state legislature to use the utmost in caution and good sense before high-volume hydraulic fracturing is permitted within our state. And if, in fact, it is found that the trade-off is just too big, they prevent it from happening for the sake of our environment and our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Legislator Robertson. We are trying to control that now. Please, you're taking our time without making a comment on the record.
Martha Robertson, Chair of the Tompkins County Legislature. Thank you for listening to the 14,000 comments on the first SGEIS. The revised version is better, but there are still too many unanswered questions for us to proceed with this experimental industry. I'm disturbed that the DEC has failed to provide local governments the information and tools we need to prepare for this transformation. This document leaves local governments completely on our own to anticipate the consequences and to find the money to address them. My home district is the town of Dryden, which has been sued by Anschutz Exploration for using its zoning authority to ban fracking. Dryden passed its ban because the town watched what's happened in Pennsylvania since they started drilling. We thought this draft would provide a clear-eyed analysis of the cost as well as the benefits of fracking, but the study by Ecology and Environment falls far short. In the E&E report, the benefits are calculated in great detail with pages and pages of definitive-looking tables of numbers. The negatives are mentioned but not calculated anywhere. Further, the rewards are based on overstated estimates of the gas reserves. E&E used the EIA's estimate of 489 TCF and didn't mention the USGS's more recent figure of 84 TCF. Therefore, all the estimates of revenues are overstated, probably by a factor of 5. Moreover, E&E assumed that Ioga's numbers are correct. Ioga is not a disinterested observer. Production estimates and other figures should have come from a neutral source. E&E tried to address the volatility in housing, but ignored what will happen after the boom is over, when there will be a glut of units and all home values will fall. They failed to note the impact of hundreds of thousands of trucks on home values. E&E acknowledges, without any qualitative or quantitative analysis, these costs to local governments and communities. Negative impact on existing industries such as tourism and agriculture, road and bridge repair, fire, police, dispatch, and first aid as a result of increased traffic, added costs for public water supply systems, higher costs for education, housing, health, welfare, and solid waste. They did not mention additional work responsibilities of the local health departments, assessment, and county clerks. Somehow, all these increased costs for governmental services will have to be borne under New York's new property tax cap. The DEC has failed in its responsibility to local governments. Without knowing what the costs could be, how can we plan? Towns are struggling on their own with small staffs to get the most critical protections in place. The DEC must redo the socioeconomic study to provide a full picture of the costs and benefits. As Mark Smith, Bradford County Commissioner, wrote to Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett last April, I've heard politicians in complete favor of the gas industry use the phrase, "We don't want to kill the golden goose." I would like to state that the golden goose does not exist, no more than the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, or the Easter Bunny.
Thank you, Legislator. Legislator Herz. Legislator Herz. H-E-R-Z. Okay, Legislator Sullivan.
Good morning. I'm Steve Herz from Windsor, New York. I wear many hats. I'm a Broome County legislator, a farmer, a landowner, a parent, a businessman, a former educator, and an environmentalist. I remember being at the DEC hearing in Shenango Bridge a couple years ago, though frankly it seems like an eternity. And I have to ask what's changed since that hearing. Our county budget is severely constrained. We're laying off people and we're curtailing mass transit because we have no funds. Another fact, individuals are leaving this area. Quickly, quite frankly. I was a former teacher. Some of my students have come to me after they've graduated from BU and BCC, unable to find positions. I advised them to go to Bradford County. They called me the next day. These are engineering students. They had jobs the next day. Farms are shutting down in this area and are being sold to speculators. Our rural areas, frankly, are becoming wastelands. As a teacher, former teacher, I find what's going on in our educational system to be untenable. We're laying off teachers, we're curtailing programs, and new and aspiring teachers simply cannot get jobs because there is no money. A few questions I'd like to ask. How are we going to continue to fund public services? How are we going to create opportunities to keep our best in this area? How are we going to keep farms viable? How are we going to keep our educational system funded? I submit that with the good and reasonable regulations that DEC has put together, the leases that the landowners have formulated, the natural gas industry will provide the funding to create what we need. Let me close with a comment that seems to be going around, and that comment is onerous to me, and that comment is collateral damage. A lot of people, some people have said, well, it's unfortunate that there's going to be some collateral damage. Let me tell you, that collateral damage, my friends, my farmers, your educational system, that collateral damage has to be minimized. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislator Sullivan.
My name is Loretta Sullivan. I'm a Tioga County legislator representing Legislative District 4, which includes the towns of Nichols, Tioga, and Owego. The majority of residents in my district are in favor of developing our natural gas resources, and I'm speaking today on their behalf. My district is very rural, where many families have lived on their properties for several generations, and farms have been handed down from grandfather to father to son. The business community in Tioga County is very small, and industry is almost non-existent. The one and only major industry in the county has implemented several job layoff programs just in the last few years. While the cost of living continues to rise each year, the opportunities for earning a living continue to decline. More and more of our residents are forced to move out of the area. Our children must move away from us in order to find employment. My constituents reside in an area in the state where most of the gas development will occur or will start. They are part of the silent majority of hardworking landowners and community members. They are not highly funded activists who are bused to these hearings, but rather—
Please, ladies and gentlemen, please don't interrupt the speaker.
But rather, they are the residents of Ground Zero who joined landowner coalitions for the purpose of protecting their land and the environment in which they live. They are not the inconsiderate, greedy money grabbers that some try to make them out to be, but rather thoughtful stewards of their land, looking for a reasonable and responsible opportunity to keep themselves afloat and to keep their families intact. It was my constituents and other southern tier landowners who originally started the dialogue with the DEC, urging to tighten up some of those regulations that they felt were lacking. They were in favor of and encouraged reasonable regulations. However, many of the regulations in the revised draft SGEIS now has my constituents concerned that New York State once again may be over-regulating and once again sending the message that New York is not open for business. On behalf of my constituents, I urge you to expedite the completion of the SGEIS and do so in a manner that will make New York competitive for gas development. 3.5 years is enough.
Thank you, Legislator. Legislator Chock. Ladies and gentlemen, please. The applause is delaying the process, and that will deny some of your friends and neighbors the opportunity to speak to us today. So please, withhold your applause. A brief, polite applause at the end of someone's comments is fine, but extended applause only delays the process. Legislator?
You called Carol Chock, right?
Correct.
Carol Chock, Tompkins County Legislature, where I chair a subcommittee for our Council of Governments examining impacts on our tax rolls and land values. We found that New York State allows drilling to occur only 100 feet from homes, and we learned from banks, appraisers, and attorneys that our ability to buy a home or get a home equity loan is threatened if lenders cannot meet basic standards to sell those loans to the secondary market. The lenders have been quite clear that they are not coming from an environmental perspective. Setting the minimum 200 or 300-foot setbacks they need to stay in business will not provide environmentally safe distance between industry and our homes. But the bankers made it clear that New York State must set a bigger distance between buildings in any kind of drilling activity for them to continue doing business. So our committee brought those bankers to New York, to Albany 7 months ago. They gave the same message to the DEC and the governor's office. The answers are not in this new EIS. There are conflicts in the EIS, the proposed regulations, and even existing law with decades-old requirements of residential mortgage lending and secondary market standards established by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, and even New York State's own Sunny Maid mortgage agency. Surface or subsurface lease rights within 200 feet of a residential structure not acceptable to Freddie Mac. FHA won't accept surface or subsurface leases within 300 feet of the home or even property boundary lines. Those setbacks can't just apply to the wellhead, they must apply to storage of chemicals, pipelines, and other ancillary activities. DEC ignored that, but the national press and the New York State Bar Association have looked. FHFA, which now oversees Fannie and Freddie, has confirmed that it is the lender's responsibility. New York State must respond if we want to own homes, finance, buy and sell, take equity out when we need it. Those of you in the room here with leases, regardless of whether you are pro or anti-drilling for other reasons, it is important to go home and check out your leases. A 200-foot clause is not good enough unless it has those other stipulations. Check with your bank. You may be in violation of your mortgage. Know that when you go to buy, sell, or get a loan in the future, you will need to renegotiate the terms, each of you individually, unless New York State sets those parameters across the board at the state level. The fact that New York State was so clearly unaware and then chose to ignore the specific needs of this competing and essential industry undermines our confidence that New York State has done its due diligence to protect even the basic homeownership rights of New Yorkers and the needs of our existing businesses, the lifeblood of our communities. Let's help them stay in business, do the regulations right. Take the time.
Thank you. Legislator Keibel.
Thank you. Ron Keibel, Broome County Legislator, District 11, representing the towns of Lisle, Triangle, Nanticoke, villages of Lisle and Whitney Point, and portions of the towns of Barker and Maine. I support responsible gas development. New York State DEC has been on the forefront with regulations protecting our resources. During my career of 35 years of being a regulator, I could always count on DEC to assist with any issues that arose while doing my job. With over 3 years of studying natural gas development, it's time to believe the science, look at the history, and issue permits to allow drilling. The landowners I represent have worked diligently to develop leases that protect their homes and their land for themselves and generations to follow. Continued delays will only weaken the coalition's solidarity when landowners have to settle for substandard leases, allowing them to continue paying taxes on their property. In closing, let's permit drilling, staff and support the New York DEC as needed, and therefore allow landowners to develop the resource they own. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator. Legislator Lewis. Legislator Lewis.
Hi, I'm Julie Lewis, Broome County Legislator from District 6, which represents Southeast Vestal, the town of Binghamton, and the town of Conklin. I am also Vice President of the Joint Landowners Coalition. In regards to the regulations, I'm concerned about the arbitrary setbacks. They seem to be, they seem to take too much land out of play. Also, there's a lot of conflicting information in the SGEIS, which needs to be addressed. And the stream setbacks seem to be too onerous. Also, supersedure, I'm very concerned about the supersedure. The DEC needs to make it clear that existing state law grants oversight of gas, oil, and mineral development exclusively to the state, not local townships. These activist municipalities are engaging in the ultimate regulation of drilling by enacting total bans, which are illegal, and they must be struck down or no driller will want to set foot in New York. With these regulations, I'd like to know what message are you sending to businesses, to landowners, to other states? Is New York really open for business? Several companies have attempted to set up residents in New York State and establish their businesses, and under the regulatory restrictions under the moratorium, they opted to move their headquarters into Pennsylvania. We know that Chesapeake has done this, Talisman has done this, a geoscience company has done this, and Laser Midstream, who's working in Windsor, has also set up headquarters in Pennsylvania, just to name a few. These are concerns as county legislator. This concerns all of us in terms of business location and tax infrastructure, and especially jobs. You all know that we've experienced some devastating flooding last month. One of the companies who's a major employer, BAE, employs over 1,300 people, and they're considering whether or not they're going to stay in business here in Broome County. That's a major concern for the people of this area. So in conclusion, I'd like to state that New York natural gas will not only bring new jobs, but keep existing jobs here. The Marcellus is not a problem, but a solution. Please make New York open for business now. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator. Supervisor Zorn. Supervisor Zorn.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm from the town of Tioga. We're in Tioga County, west of Owego, halfway between there and Waverly. We too were devastated in the flood, so I come here today. I'm also a former petroleum product terminal manager for a pipeline company, and also I member of the Tioga County Gas Coalition, and also as a property owner. So my thoughts, I'm certainly in favor of responsible drilling. I believe that 3.5 years is long enough. I think that the DEC, I know regulations that we have to abide by in petroleum industry and stuff, and I know that we don't pump water, we don't do anything without documentation, we don't do anything without regulations involved. I see no different regulations involved with the natural gas industry. They got to be held accountable. And I also believe that if the DEC were to require more staffing, that should probably be laid back onto the gas companies to provide that and provide all the documentation that they need upon request for the DEC to monitor. Go back to the flood issue. Ours is a small town. We're 4,500 people. We're right along the Susquehanna River. We're devastated by the flood through the village and stuff. We don't have any business. We don't have very little. Everything is agricultural, and when you drive around the country in the town of Tioga, you look at a lot of vacant farmland. We used to have 100 farms or more in Tioga County. Now we probably got less than 20. And these people need the economy. Some lady spoke about people leaving the area. I have 2 nieces. Both of them moved out. One went to Denver and the other one's in Tampa, Florida. We can't afford that. So I believe responsible drilling, and I support it, and I believe that the DEC will do the right thing for us. 3.5 years is long enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Legislator Diffendorf.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Marchi Diffendorf, legislator in the 7th District for Broome County, which represents the towns of Kirkwood, Conklin, and Windsor. I would like to thank the DEC for holding these very important hearings in Broome County, where it is likely to be one of the epicenters for gas development, unless the state overregulates itself right out of the gas business. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I'm happy that New York finally got to this point. The opponents of gas development say they should take their time and not rush into allowing hydrofracking. Well, I think 3.5 years is long enough. In less than 1 month, December 9th, it will be 4 years since I was first contacted by a gas company. I am also the chairman of the Kirkwood Gas Coalition. While we've been waiting for New York State DEC to complete its study on hydrofracking, we have had over 10 members of our coalition die. These people have died waiting for the DEC to complete its study.
Excuse me, legislator, just could we pause for a moment here and pause the clock as well? We'll extend his time at the end of the 3 minutes if necessary. Let's try to keep those type of demonstrations outside of the theater for people. It only cuts into the time that people will have the opportunity to speak here today.
I'll back up here a minute. I am also chairman of the Kirkwood Gas Coalition, and while we have been waiting for New York State DEC to complete its study on hydrofracking, we have had over 10 members of our coalition die. They will never get to see their land lease, never get to take that vacation of a lifetime, buy that gold necklace for his wife, or maybe do some remodeling. I know we are here to comment on the draft SGEIS. Well, if New York State Governor Cuomo ever wants to get the state out of debt, the governor should tell the DEC Commissioner, Martens, to get the politics out of this document and let the engineers determine the best way to move forward. When we hear about gas companies walking out of meetings with the DEC, it's time the DEC realizes that they have overregulated and stopped any reasonable chance for gas development in the Empire State. As it stands right now, DEC Commissioner and his staff have shot the goose that would lay the golden egg for New York State and all its residents. Thank you, and let's do the right thing for New York and America and get the politics out of the gas business. Thank you.
Thank you, legislator. Federal Liaison Blaine. Federal Liaison Blaine.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Blaine, and I'm representing Congressman Maurice Hinchey, who is in Washington, D.C. today for votes. I want to thank the DEC for the opportunity to comment on the revised draft SGEIS on horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing in the Marcellus Shale. Congressman Hinchey appreciates the hard work that Commissioner Martens and his staff have invested in this document. In addition, DEC has lost many staff over the past few years, making this task all the more difficult. Despite this sincere effort, Congressman Hinchey believes that this SGEIS falls far short of what is needed to protect local communities from the risks posed by shale gas drilling and does not fully mitigate potential threats to public health, drinking water, air quality, and municipal infrastructure. 2 years ago, in response to the first draft SGEIS, Congressman Hinchey provided 11 detailed recommendations to mitigate the risks of shale gas drilling. These included a cumulative impact study, a ban on the use of toxic chemicals in fracking fluids, a requirement for full public disclosure of all chemicals used in the fracking process, more DC staff to oversee drilling operations, phased-in development of new well pads, and more. Unfortunately, these recommendations are not included in the new SGEIS, and others are only partially addressed. We have learned much more about hydraulic fracturing since 2009. More incidents of broken industry promises, harm to local communities, air pollution, and water contamination have been reported. Just this week in Pavilion, Wyoming, the EPA found fracking chemicals in well water. These incidents raise serious new concerns that are not addressed by the revised SGEIS. Recently, physicians and other health professionals from around New York State called for full assessment of the public health impacts of gas exploration and production. The SGEIS omits this critical review, and Congressman Hinchey agrees that the state should conduct a health impact assessment. In addition, the EPA has begun a new study on the impact of fracking on water resources that Congressman Hinchey initiated. This study is expected to produce initial results by the end of next year. The EPA is also developing rules to protect the public from toxic air pollutants that are emitted by gas drilling sites. The Congressman believes it would be irresponsible and unwise for New York to allow new shale gas drilling before these actions are completed. The consequence of failing to safeguard our water resources, air quality, and public health would far outweigh the purported economic benefits associated with drilling. Congressman Hinchey believes the current SGEIS does not provide these protections and should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call the next 10 speakers down. If you're seated in the front row and you've already spoken, I would like, there are seats here to the left and to the right. I'd like to clear out this front row for speakers that will be called down now. The following speakers I'd like to come and sit in the very front row: Julie Scott, Victor Furman, Charles Morse, M-A-U-R-S-S-E, I believe, Karen Matusik, Ross Horowitz, Sandra Davis, Eileen Hamlin, Wes Ernsberger, Clark Rhodes, and Christy Everett. After you've spoken, please go back to your original seat. We'd like to keep this open. We'll call down 10 more speakers.
Our next elected is Councilor Kestner. Councilor Kestner? Oh.
Thank you very much. I'm Jean Kestner. I'm a councilor at large in the city of Syracuse. Our Common Council voted unanimously on October 24th to ban hydrofracking in the city of Syracuse. The Skaneateles Lake watershed, which provides water, unfiltered water, to the city of Syracuse, is already exempt. And I am here to say that what's good for Syracuse, and it's a comfort to know that our water source is as secure as it can be, that what's good for us should be good for the state of New York. Hydrofracking is underway in Pennsylvania, with all the risks and the benefits now being played out. In New York State should extend its moratorium until we have answers to the following questions. Does hydrofracking pose a serious risk to water supplies, to health, to air quality, to quality of life? How much radiation is released? Why would New York State allow hydrofracking?
Ladies and gentlemen, please let the speaker make their comments without being interrupted. It is only making this process more drawn out, and again, we will lose the opportunity to hear some of your neighbors. Folks, you have to cooperate here. The demonstration was outside the auditorium.
I'm hoping that I have some...
We'll extend her minutes because of the interruptions. But please, folks, wait until the comments are over, and even then, keep it brief so we can go on to the next speaker. Thank you.
But my question is, why would New York State allow hydrofracking without answers to those questions? What is the rush? We know, at least from newspaper accounts, that it's not because we need the energy, because Dominion Resources has asked the Department of Energy for permission to export 1 billion cubic feet of Marcellus shale gas per day because, according to the Associated Press, natural gas supply is outpacing demand. The natural gas contained in Marcellus and Utica shale deposits has been trapped for hundreds of thousands of years. It is not going anywhere. We can learn through other people's experiences how to extract it safely. When we can protect our environment, then we should talk about hydrofracking in New York. New York has another resource in abundance and one more fundamental to life, and that is more fundamental to life than natural gas, and that is water. Ask Texas with its fires or Atlanta last year with its drought. Water is indispensable to this economy. It is indispensable to society and is indispensable to life. Clean water, which hydrofracking puts at grave risk, is a far more valuable commodity than natural gas that can be extracted from Marcellus and Utica shale. As time goes on and climate changes, water will become even more valuable, and New York will be in a very strong position. So my message from Syracuse is this: extend the moratorium, experiment elsewhere, perfect the extraction process before putting New Yorkers and their environment at risk. I also have a comment from Mayor Stephanie Miner, and I will file that, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Councilor. Now we have Director Schwartz. Director Schwartz. Paul Schwartz. Is Mr. Schwartz in the auditorium?
Good afternoon. My name is...
If you could hold your comments briefly, there seems to be some disruption in the audience. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul. Good afternoon. I'm Paul Schwartz, Susquehanna River Basin Commission. Our commission is a federal interstate compact agency created in 1971. Our members include New York State, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and the federal government. We're charged with the responsibility to plan for and manage the water resources of the basin in coordination with our member jurisdictions. Let me first extend the Commission's compliments to New York State for the initiative in undertaking the SGEIS. We believe the document is comprehensive in scope, and the department has done a good job in identifying the range of potential impacts and the management controls necessary to avoid or minimize them. On the issue of water quality, we commend the department for addressing this issue squarely in the SGEIS, focusing both on appropriate water quality standards and on practices related to handling, storage, transportation, and treatment of these fluids. As we have done before, we will continue to rely on New York to take the lead on protection of water quality. Our commission is currently responsible for withdrawals, regulating withdrawals and consumptive water uses throughout the Susquehanna River Basin, and that includes in the New York portion of the basin. Our regulations apply not only to the natural gas industry, but to others whose water use exceeds our regulatory thresholds. We do not regulate drilling or the production or transmission of natural gas. Rather, we rely upon our member jurisdictions to oversee these aspects of the activity. Although we have made some specific changes related to the industry, we have not modified any of our current standards or requirements associated with the review and approval of water withdrawals. The natural gas industry continues to be subject to the very same requirements that govern all water withdrawals across the basin, and that we believe are appropriate to protect our water resources as we simultaneously allow for the utilization to support this industry. Number one, we share the concerns expressed by DEC in the revised SGEIS regarding potential water withdrawal impacts, including reduced stream flow, impacts to aquatic habitats and ecosystems, and impacts to wetlands and aquifer depletion. We agree that the issue is not so much the overall quantity of water, but the potential for adverse impacts being based upon the timing and location of withdrawals. I will say with very little time left that we look forward to working with New York State as it moves forward on this important issue.
Thank you, Director.